All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for today's webinar entitled Doing More with Less, Your New IT Budget Reality. Really appreciate everybody joining us with everything going on today. And let's jump in to the presentation here. So first, I'm going to ask you a poll question here. And go ahead and answer it, and I'll go through the next couple slides while you'll answer it and then give you kind of the results afterwards here. But the question here, are you actively trying to cut costs right now today? So please go ahead and answer that in the polling question pop up there. And first, let me introduce myself while you're answering that. So my name is Brandon Shupp. I am a Vice President of Products here at SolarWinds, and I've been at SolarWinds on and off for the better part of about 10 years. And so I've also worked in the IT security space and with one of my previous engagements at Alien Vault, as well as in the database performance management space when I was also at Idera. I went to Texas A&M University and got my undergrad in business administration there. So try, if you're a Texas fan or another university, try not to hold it against me too much there. And also with me here on the call today, I have Kevin Mealy. And Kevin Mealy is one of our advisory sales engineers, and I'll let Kevin introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. So my name is Kevin Mealy. I've been with SolarWinds for approximately 10 years now. I actually started over on the systems engineer side back in probably about 1998 or so with Citigroup. I worked there for about 10 years doing sysadmin infrastructure work, and then moved into the sales engineering role with a company called Tech Tools, where in 2010 SolarWinds acquired us, and we've been doing this ever since. So we definitely appreciate you being here.
All right, so let's go ahead here and cover the agenda for today. So we're going to talk around kind of 4 key areas, around automation and around optimizing assets and infrastructure, and we'll drill into some subsections there, specifically around assets and controlling IT asset costs, really understanding kind of multi-cloud environments and making sure that you have appropriate monitoring of usage and costs. And then also looking at consumption trends and optimization opportunities across your virtual infrastructure, your storage infrastructure, as well as your network. And then we'll get into and talk about rationalizing and optimizing your monitoring tools, really across the entire, the full stack, the entire IT monitoring stack. And then lastly, we'll go into talking about the SolarWinds IT operations management portfolio. And so with that, let's go ahead and cover the results of the poll here real quickly before I jump straight into the slides. So of y'all that are currently on the webinar, 34% said yes, 16% said no, that they are not focused on reducing cost, and 47% with no response. So definitely, folks are doubled up there in terms of the no's, in terms of focusing on cutting costs and optimizing the spend. So let's go ahead and jump directly into today's content. So first, we're going to talk about, really how do you automate time-intensive tasks? And so, what this really boils down to is, if you think about a lot of the things that you're doing day in and day out, there's some things that are very critical that you absolutely, you want to, be doing it hands-on from the CLI or from the UI of the device. That you need somebody to really make sure that everything's going smoothly, that everything is having the desired impacts and results of doing that change. But there are many others that are, can be in theory automated and even turned over to, maybe some more junior level folks in your organization as well. And you can actually, we'll talk about this here a little bit, and Kevin's going to give a demo. But there are things that you could do within some of our tooling within SolarWinds that will allow you to really, satisfy all of those needs, really allow you to automate, some tasks, allowing you to delegate other types of tasks to more junior folks. And there's an interesting stat over here on the right here from a 2020 study by Cisco. in which 46% of organizations had an incident caused by an unpatched vulnerability. And I go back, my trade back in the day is on the networking side, and more often than not, typically when there was downtime or an outage or an incident, a lot of times it could be tied back to a misconfiguration error type of thing. And so, really making sure that you've got the right automation in place to allow you to do that, both in scale, but also very securely and efficiently, will one, allow you to, reduce the amount of mistakes. Two, will allow you to really, which then will lead to less incidents and outages, whether it's a security incident or just a general outage. And then ultimately, when those things happen, you're providing a poor customer satisfaction or experience. You can create, whether it's internal users and that experience or it's actual external customers that are, depending on the organization, that's where a lot of times really kind of, leads to the poor customer satisfaction and reputation. But it really boils down to, many hours are being spent on boring tasks, which really could be spent on higher value initiatives. Whether it's those types of changes that need more care and feeding to make sure if any issues crop up, you can think on the fly and respond to those, or other projects, with pretty much every IT team out there, there's no shortage of the number of projects in which your organization would, wants you to go accomplish and do. And, the more that you can, optimize your time and allow you to focus on more of those higher value type projects or tasks, while still keeping the business running and automating, a lot of those things as we're kind of calling here, boring stuff or, things that aren't going to, in theory have, operational impact, if, if a, misconfiguration or, those types of things were to happen. And I look at things like, changing descriptions, on an interface or, changing community strings. Those will have an impact, but it's not going to lead to, kind of a system down or an application down type of outage. And so as we kind of go here, into what are the types of tasks, I've rallied, through a few here, but you can see kind of a list here of the other types. So you see some of the ones that I mentioned around deploying configuration changes, updating the operating system or firmware or a patch, whether it's a network device or an app, backing up your network configurations and being able to version them and diff them to see what's changed, and updating and deleting or creating access rights, especially right now with a lot of people working from home. You want to make sure that people have access only to the assets they really need to have access to, whether that's a given file or that's a given server or permissions on a network device or a server. You really want to make sure you have a method in place to where you can programmatically and very quickly do that without having to go and manually audit those. And, if you look here, we've gotten feedback, from our users on the right there where one of our products, Network Configuration Manager, is actually filling the position of a full-time employee. It's, by allowing them to focus on kind of the higher order tasks and making sure that they're taking care of the projects that the organization needs to deliver and drive on day to day, and really automating a lot of those, more boring or kind of lower level tasks within the Network Configuration Manager product. They've been able to, again, realize, a savings of, effectively a one full-time employee. So, there's definitely dollars that can be saved here to allow you to do more with less and allow you to be more efficient, with the team members that are on the team. And so with that, I talked through a few concepts. I'm actually going to hand it over to Kevin and allow him to kind of walk you through a little bit of a demo here of some of the things that we've talked about around automation.
All right, and thank you, Brandon. So we'll go ahead and share out our screen here. And essentially, we're going to go into Network Configuration Manager as Brandon was speaking about. So a few of the things that are going to help with really, say taking control of the environment, having that streamlined process, and really, being able to save yourselves time is where you're going to be able to not only look at your configurations, where we might be able to do a configuration comparison on your devices, but Network Configuration Manager backs up and restores those configs. So there are jobs that run on a periodic basis that can just back those jobs up or back up those configs, and there's no reason for anybody to manually do that. Just set it on a schedule and let it run. The other thing that is important is really managing those vulnerabilities. So with the firmware vulnerability reporting within Network Configuration Manager, we have the ability to go through and actually do firmware upgrades. Right? So this streamlines that process for a number of the devices that are on the market today, where we're taking roughly 40 or so steps that you might do manually on just a single device, and streamlining that down to maybe 10 or 15. So it's a very increased time savings and efficiencies when you're doing this. The other things that are also important is making sure that you're compliant, making sure that you don't have any configurations that are out of the ordinary or basically out of compliance when it comes to the different rules that are set. And one of the examples I'll show you here is the Cisco security audit. The Cisco security audit takes a defined set of rules within these policies, and what it does is it evaluates those rules against the configuration of the different devices in your environment. And not only can we see where the violations are, we can easily click on those violations, and then we can take action against a single node, or we could take action against all the nodes where this violation occurs. So think about having 10 devices or 100 devices or 1,000 devices where this violation is, right? Brandon talked about where NCM here is even equating to a full-time employee, right? You can utilize this process to literally go and push the updates against the different systems that you have in the environment with one click. Schedule it. There's an approval process as well so that the right people can approve it before it happens. And then these updates can happen on those devices when you want them to without the manual intervention. The other aspect of this is going to be where you can literally take the similar process and utilize the config change templates that exist in the product. There are a number of templates that are built in here for the different types of vendors and different processes that you may go through. And maybe you want to take this and maybe update a password or an SNMP community string for that matter. You can click on that change template for, let's say, the Cisco community string. I can define my variables within that template. I can choose which systems that I'd like to be able to apply these to. So I'm going to do this for all my switches. I've got hundreds of switches. I'm going to define it for those switches. I'm going to set all my community strings. We hit next. We plug in those community strings, whatever it might be, right? It doesn't really matter here. We'll just kind of give you an example. Make it read-only, and then basically the current one, and then the new one, and then we hit next. At that point, it's going to generate the scripts that are sitting inside those templates, and then from there you can schedule the job against the different systems that you want to push this out to, or you could execute it immediately, right, because this interacts with the CLI on those devices. And then from there, you could either have it go through the approval process or, again, have it run on the scheduler or do the execution, just right then and there. So you have lots of different options within this product to be able to manage things from a central location, but also to provide you with the efficiencies that you're looking for without having to spend all your time on these tasks that really are more or less mundane. Nobody wants to go and change a community string on 1,000 devices manually. That would probably take a month, right, to do that. It depends on how much time you're spending on it, but it really would take a long time to get that done. So why not have a product like this to be able to help you streamline those processes? Another thing I mentioned was the firmware upgrades. I won't go into all the details here, but with the firmware upgrades, do the same thing, remediate those vulnerabilities. So we have some examples in here, but just to show you what this looks like, if I click on this particular process, right, I can put in my upgrade name. I'm going to choose maybe my ASA because maybe I'm going to update one of my firewalls. We're going to hit next, and then from there, we can select our image. So basically, you download your image for the devices, and then from there, you basically click on next. You're going to select your nodes, and then you're going to choose your upgrade options. Our demo actually doesn't let us go too far into this, but just so you can see what that process looks like a little bit, you can also be notified when these changes occur. So again, streamline the process, save yourself some time. And with that, I'm actually going to turn this back over to Brandon to continue the presentation.
All right, great. Thanks, Kevin. Configuration Manager is a great product. We've had it around for quite some time, and this is actually a product that is part of the the SolarWinds Orion family, and we actually have some other products on our MSP side, and so this is not showing our RMM product or our N-Central product. This is actually showing the Network Configuration Manager product specifically here. And so as we kind of go into some other areas, from a an optimization perspective, if you look at, asset management and, really ensuring that you have kind of a comprehensive view into all your IT assets. So that includes, as you can kind of see here, the bullets, understanding, how assets are performing, if, how far are they out from being ready to be retired, or are, when are the vendors going to be announcing their end of life? You also are able to look and see if you have spare assets available. So if you have a hardware failure or you have some other type of like fan failure, you quickly understand what you have available in inventory and be able to go ahead and swap those out. A great example, if we look at the network side, the fact that Network Configuration Manager is backing up those configurations. If let's say you have a router, you have a spare, handy, and you go ahead and you go and you swap it out. We've got the configuration backed up that was on the device that failed. You could go ahead and ultimately, with a couple tweaks, restore that back to that network device to get that device operational again, the structure flowing properly. So again, kind of reducing mean time to repair ultimately. And then you can really also look and see if there are software licenses that are being underutilized. And, if so, can you reallocate them to elsewhere in the business? Do you need to continue to have those software licenses? And if not, then cut those out of the budget and use that budget elsewhere. And then also identifying unauthorized assets. And, I've heard stories, I've seen stories through the years of, people saying, well, the wireless wasn't working the Wi-Fi the signal wasn't great here in my office or in this conference room. And so I brought home, some spare, wireless access point that I had hanging around, and I just plugged it in here. Well, they just opened a great big security on the shadow IT side. Folks spinning up, with the cloud and cloud services and SaaS services, just becoming, very easy to spin up a new service, a box or a Dropbox, with just a little bit of information and a click of a button, and all of a sudden there's now potentially some new services that haven't been approved or been mandated by the IT organization at in your company, and people could be doing things where they're putting data out, like an example of Box and Dropbox, they're putting data out there that doesn't need to be out there. It's sensitive to your organization. It has PII or personal identifiable information, things like that. And so, Cisco, again, had another report here on the right, so where they had a media report that about 83% of support staff admit to using unsanctioned apps in the enterprise cloud environment. So this is something that is happening, whether, we think it's not, it likely is. And so having the right visibility, really into understanding and having a full asset inventory of not just your hardware, but also what are the applications, what are the services that users in your environment are leveraging every day. And as we kind of go into this, you really needed a tool that can discover and track asset usage and ultimately its health. On an ongoing basis. So as new devices automatically get it added into the network, someone brings a laptop on, or you power up a new router or switch or whatnot. You want to make sure that your inventory is scanning periodically and that you always are making sure that you have as current of an update as possible there. And then again, monitoring licenses to make sure that they're actively being used. And if not, then you can either reallocate them or potentially not renew them and save some dollars there that you can reallocate to other parts and needs in the business. Managing your warranties and your asset refresh or cycles that you go through. And so, as you look at warranties, is it going to be more economical for you to go ahead and replace it, or should you go ahead and pay for an extended warranty, through the vendor or through a third party? Same thing on the refresh side. In some instances, it may be better to refresh a piece of hardware maybe a little bit early because it lines up with an ongoing initiative or project that you want to go ahead and kick off and begin doing. And then really aligning incidents to the affected assets. So that way you can understand quickly, okay, this user has called in and reported an issue that's going on within their environment. And, I want to know real quickly, what is the host name? What is the IP address of that asset? So I can go ahead and quickly go into my tooling and see, okay, well, let me see what they have installed on that box. How's that box performing? Is it resource constrained? Is that the reason that the laptop is running slow, or is it just because the end user has way too many things open and it's just consuming all CPU and memory? And so being able to kind of quickly pull that out and visualize and understand that is something that is critical as well into understanding just really what you have across your environment. And as we kind of a lot of that commentary there was very targeted to kind of an on-premises environment. But as we all know, most environments are hybrid nowadays. You have on-premises as well as SaaS services that you sign up for and prescribe to for your organization, but as well as cloud service providers, whether it's Google or Microsoft's with Azure or Amazon Web Services or somebody else. You're going to have typically one or more cloud service provider. And idle resources, just like we saw many years ago with virtual environments, to where how easy it is to spin up a new VM. It's the same problem and the same challenge in the cloud. How easily is it to see, how easy it is for users to quickly go out and spin up a new cloud instance or provision a new S3 bucket as an example for storage. How do I know when that user is done with that that instance and I can power it off? Or I look at it and I see that it's actually not even being hardly utilized, yet it's got plenty of CPU and RAM that's allocated to it. Well, I could probably back those down a little bit and again save on costs. So making sure that you're right sizing your environment. And then also, making sure that, typically you may have multiple cloud teams, and keeping track of those can be very, very difficult within your environment, especially as you have more cloud services, more cloud service providers, and just really having visibility into all of that, just like you have the assets on-prem, is something that is really critical when you're making sure and optimizing kind of your spend and making sure that you're not overspending in various areas of the business. And so another interesting stat here on the right, between idle resources, over provisioning, wasted cloud spend will actually exceed $14.1 billion in 2019. And 40% of those instances that were sized, at least one size larger than they needed to be. So you're spending money that you don't need to spend there if you have the appropriate amount of visibility and the appropriate amount of monitoring against those assets to allow you to quickly see those and again not have to jump from one tool to another or one cloud provider to another. Having one single place that you can go to that allows you to see your on-prem as well as your cloud-based environments is something that every environment should really have. And then again, kind of going back more to talking about the public cloud bills, You have other things here. I talked about kind of allocation from a compute perspective, but there's lots of different areas where costs can really get out of control. You look at compute, storage, memory. You also look at things like data transfer cost in and out of that cloud provider. That has definitely caught a lot of people by surprise, that they didn't realize that, oh, I have to pay for both of those, and I put an application up there, a database up there that is very chatty, and all of a sudden now my bill is a lot more than I expected it to be. And so having the ability to monitor, across AWS and Azure, leveraging the cloud APIs, so within the SolarWinds, set of products, we're not, deploying agents, out onto those endpoints. We can do that if that is a preference, but in general, most people typically hit the Azure or the AWS API, and we'll pull back the various performance statistics and metrics, and then represent those, as you can kind of see in that image there on the slide here. You can kind of represent that alongside your on-premises infrastructure and applications as well. So truly giving you a comprehensive and complete view across your environment, no matter where it's located. And as we look at, monitoring the usage of on-premise resources, we talked about shadow IT earlier. Having a product that will allow you to have visibility into bandwidth, not just at a high level and just showing you, what utilization looks like, but what specifically is the traffic that is transversing your infrastructure. Having flow-based technology, whether it's a NetFlow or JFlow, SFlow, et cetera, will allow you to understand how people are using the bandwidth in your environment, and are they using it properly? And do you need to go have a talk with somebody, or implement class-based quality of service, or other SLAs to prioritize the traffic differently? Really gives you the appropriate visibility, instead of saying, oh, we've maxed out the pipe, let's go ahead and call our service provider and upgrade the bandwidth on that pipe. First make sure that the traffic that is being used on or transversing the network is really business critical traffic, and people are doing the things that they should be doing. VM sprawl and right sizing, we talked about it on the cloud side, but again, I mentioned on the virtualization side, it's very similar. Did they provision it and forget about it, and forget to destroy it when they were done with that machine? And then similarly on storage, if you look at, do you really need to invest in more storage? Whether it's from an external array or from a local storage or whatnot. And so, again, another interesting stat here, specific to cloud users, estimating that 27% of waste in 2019, and a lot of that has to go around, optimizing costs, and things like that. But I think you'll be surprised around some of these, and some of you are probably nodding your heads of, oh yeah, there's a lot of users that don't tell me when they're done with that VM or that cloud instance, and it just sits up there and runs, or they don't go up there and they don't power it down themselves when it's done, and I have to kind of go and clean up after them. And so again, having the right tooling to give you the visibility into that is very critical. And so as we, again, kind of talk, specific around bandwidth, virtualization, storage, I talked about, flow-based technology, setting up QS policies, class-based quality service or other QS policies to make sure that you're prioritizing the different type of traffic properly, but also, not just giving you visibility into the current health and performance of things like CPU, memory, network storage right now, but if you have a set of data over time, you can go ahead and look at, based upon my historical usage, where am I trending towards? How far out am I from actually being ready to, needing to add another CPU, or adding more RAM, or actually upgrading my network pipe, or, adding another disk into the array, or adding another array into my environment? You really, having something that can do modeling scenarios to really, help you have visibility and plan for the future as well. So not just understand the now, but also plan appropriately for the future as well, because you may have budgeted for something and, at the end, in 6 months, and based upon the data that's, is being collected and kind of trending that out, you can actually see that, it's actually probably more 9 to 12 months before you're due for an upgrade there. You can repurpose some of those dollars, into other parts of the IT infrastructure there. And then again, kind of same thing, same story here on the storage side. Orphaned SDK files for virtual machines, and being able to do snapshots. People do snapshots. Do you need to keep all those snapshots? Can you reduce some of those snapshots down? And Virtualization Manager, Storage Resource Monitor, NetFlow Traffic Analyzer are all great products to give you visibility into that. Kevin will talk about that here more in a second, but Virtualization Manager specifically will actually go through and make recommendations as well, and actually say, you know what, you're actually over subscribed on this ESX host, as an example. We recommend that you go ahead and you move these two guests over to another host to make sure that your environment is performing at its most optimal. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Kevin here and allow him to actually go through a demo here of the Virtualization Manager product.
All right, Brandon, thank you. So as Brandon was mentioning, Virtualization Manager is one of the products that runs on the Orion platform. I know somebody had a question about whether or not this was running on the RMM or the N-Central platform, which is kind of down the MSP line of business for us. This is really on the Orion side. So all of you that are aware of Orion, you know all the products that live here. So Virtualization Manager is where we'll focus most of our time. With Virtualization Manager, being able to understand where you're wasting resources, when you're going to run out of resources, are two very important things. And being able to plan for more resources is also another aspect of this product. So when we're looking at just the items that are listed out here, we have the recommendations engine, which I'm going to show you guys in a second. We have the capacity planner, which helps us to understand when we're going to run out of resources, but also to plan for adding more workload, maybe adding more ESX hosts in the environment, sprawl, right-sizing the environment, understanding where we're wasting resources, and then the storage aspect, really understanding where and when really we're going to run out of resources, right? So let's just talk about the recommendations engine real quick here. Within Virtualization Manager, we're just gathering the information from the VMware APIs and/or the Hyper-V hosts through WMI. So what we're doing is we're gathering this information, and after 7 days, we're going to make recommendations as to where improvements can be made. Right? And that's really the key here. Where can improvements be made? So I have a recommendation here on this ESX cluster. Right? And we're literally taking that information, we're taking it all into account. We're planning, really just kind of trending all this out for you. And what we're doing is we're showing you here, in this case it says vCenter has been lower than minimum threshold for 95% on the CPU. And we're making the recommendation to decrease the number of CPUs from 8 to 2, right, to free up resources. So when I look at this particular recommendation, I have some options here. The word manager in this product is very true. We can power off the VMs. We can change the resources on the fly or schedule them. So Virtualization Manager is going to give you recommendations on what to change to better your environment. Then you can actually literally take the action to make those changes so that you have more resources in your environment. Right? So literally I can look at this here. If I want to schedule it, I can do that. If I want to perform it now, I can do that. If you want some proof of what we're telling you from the product, then we're going to show you all those trends in the statistics view. So you can literally see, when did this really start to go awry, right? Or in this case, show me the fact that I'm not actually using these resources and I should free these up, right? So this is one area that I think we do a really good job at saving you time. Not many people want to go and pull these metrics back themselves, throw it in an Excel spreadsheet, and figure out where you're running low on resources or where you could free up the resources for that matter. So we're going to make those recommendations. Not only do we do this for CPU, we do this for memory. We're also going to provide this information for moving from one data store to another data store. So there's a lot of recommendations that we can provide to you so that you can make those educated decisions for your infrastructure. Right, so you're going to notice all these different options that we list out here. Space utilization, memory utilization. It's really a great way to be able to manage your environment. The other thing now I also mentioned was the capacity planner. Capacity planner is going to take all this information that we're capturing, this trending analysis data, and we're going to use it to your advantage, right? We're going to literally take and allow you to create plans to maybe run a health check, so kind of just do a checkup in the environment. Maybe I'm going to simulate adding virtual machines to the infrastructure. So maybe I've got a project coming on board and I need to do this. Maybe I've got extra SQL servers, whatever it might be. Simulate adding extra ESX hosts or both. Maybe my checkup said you're running low on both resources. You don't have enough resources to add more VMs. You know you're going to be adding more VMs. So now I need to plan for both in that scenario. Right. So I have different ways in which I can go through and kind of plug in my time frames. I pick my cluster that I want to evaluate this against. I choose my resources as far as what I want to evaluate this against as well, and then my usage history, and then I move on through the summary. Right. If I want to look at one of these reports, then I could go over here and say view this report. So this is just a checkup report. Right. They're easy to read. And you can literally see what our projections are looking like. Right. What am I running it for? I'm projecting out a year. And then we're taking and we're looking at the workload, the current workloads, right? What's my projected growth? In this case, I'm just doing a health check, so I didn't plug any of those things in. But I can see my resources. And then if I scroll down some more, this is really where we start to show you those projections. Right? CPU looks like it's fine for a while in this particular cluster that we ran it against. Memory, not so much. We're going to be starting to run out of memory at some point here. And then the disk usage, 100%, right? So we're actually going to see this. So actually memory utilization is dropping and our disk storage utilization is actually increasing. So we're going to hit 100% on May 6th, right? So in 3 days. These are actually 20 plus years. So, again, another way to be able to utilize our products, one, to save you money, right? But two, to plan for the future so that you can make the appropriate decisions. Now, beyond that, right, we're also going to show you some of the things around being able to do some extra cleanup. So that really comes into play in our sprawl dashboard. So the sprawl dashboard is going to show you kind of a different perspective than the recommendations engine. It's going to really kind of show us things where I can, maybe go make some changes, right? But in this aspect, I'm also going to be able to clean up my snapshots. So I have the option to delete snapshots, from my my VMware and Hyper-V environments. So maybe I've got a bunch of old snapshots and I need to do this. I can certainly do that. Idle VMs. So Brandon talked about people spinning up VMs and they just sit there, right? They're not using them, right? I could power those off straight through here, and I could also maybe wait a period of time, see if anybody complains about their VM being off, right? And then I could go over to the powered off VMs that have been off for more than 30 days, and I can say, you know what, just delete it. Just remove it. We don't need this anymore, right? The orphan VMDK files, as we mentioned, right? Here's where we can actually delete those files. Now, we have a little warning up here about making sure you're monitoring all your hosts before you do that, and that's fine, right? You need to make sure you do that. But the idea here is that where I have these files left over from VMs that no longer exist, I might want to remove those. Right? Again, save myself storage space, save myself these resources that we've already paid for. Right? It's very easy to get sprawl happening here. So definitely something you guys want to take a look at. And there is just one other thing before I turn it back over to Brandon I want to mention. Brandon talked about the hybrid environments. There is the cloud monitoring aspect from Virtualization Manager, where we can monitor AWS and Azure from an instance perspective. We don't have to necessarily put an agent to monitor the operating system. We don't have to necessarily do that, right? We can just get the statistics from the the instances themselves. But if we want to monitor further operating system applications, then we would take into account the server and application monitor product that we sell, and start turning on those monitors as well. And with that, I'm actually going to turn this back over to Brandon so that he can continue on here.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and let's jump here into the next slide, talking about kind of really IT tool rationalization and consolidation. And monitoring is really decentralized, in silos. Silos typically purchase their own tooling, and so, we see more often than not that there can be overlap, and that can create additional expense to manage tools across various teams. From a day-to-day aspect, upgrades, training, and integrating the tools together and making sure that they are talking with each other as new technologies come out. Hopefully those tools are, staying current and modern with your needs, whether it's things like, we talked about cloud, but also, software defined, so SDX, or whether it's software defined storage or software defined networking, whatever it may be, that really amplifies the problem too, as well, because then you may have some tools which support what you need and other tools which don't, so you don't really have the complete and full picture. And if we look at a typical enterprise IT organization spends around 29% of the IT department's time, which is about $2.5 million annually, to ultimately root cause application performance issues and other issues in the environment. So again, having the tooling and that the data is married together, giving you full stack visibility instead of trying to manually piece the data together, having to jump from one tool to another. You see, a lot of shift back and forth in the markets of best of breed versus kind of a single pane of glass, all-in-one type of solution. And the more you have everything together, you can play that data off each other. And Kevin will actually show a little bit of that here just in a second. But if we actually kind of go through, as we talk through all the various layers, of delivering, in this instance, an application, you want to make sure the user experience is good. You want to make sure, the application is healthy and performant. The database is healthy and performant, and that there aren't queries or, the wait, locks in the database going on. You want to look back at the, the server, the storage, the network, everything we've been talking about here today. And that can be on-prem, it can be in private cloud, that could be SaaS, it could be infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, or it could be a combination all mixed together, delivering that application. And so really having an IT monitoring tool that gives you full visibility no matter where your technology is deployed, on-prem, private cloud, public cloud, or a combination thereof, is something that is really critical to reducing ultimately that mean time to repair and root causing the problem. And so real quickly, I'm going to have actually Kevin go through another demo here around some of our AppStack technology.
All right, thank you, Brandon. So I'm going to show you guys actually a few things, even beyond the AppStack here. So one of the key features to understanding the infrastructure is being able to see the relationships. And AppStack is going to be one of those things that does that. This is going to be a little bit more visual from a connectivity perspective. So this is called Orion Maps. If you have this running in your environment, you just need to go to Orion Maps and you could build out the map for yourselves, right? We do some of the automatic mapping with dependencies if we know them. We typically will know that from a virtual perspective. If you're using our storage resource monitor product, we'll also be able to tie in your storage devices. We've got some pure storage devices showing up in our example. This is really a Hyper-V VMware Exchange environment using pure storage in the back end. Right? And some of these things that you're seeing here with these connections really comes down to our application dependency mapping. So this is within Server and Application Monitor. And basically what you do is you put an agent on each one of the systems, and it's going to actually map out what basically processes are talking across those specific ports. So maybe SQL, or in this case, Exchange, right? We can see those things, and we can map those out for you so you don't have to visually understand or figure out what it looks like, right? We're going to do that for you. Same thing with the VM environment, right? We know the dependencies. We know what vCenter is controlling which clusters and hosts and VMs and data stores, so we know all those relationships. And when we plug in Storage Resource Monitor, we're also going to see from a VMware perspective and Hyper-V perspective, which pieces of storage are connected, and then we can actually draw those relationships too. So Orion Maps is something you're probably going to want to look at, not only from a systems perspective, but also from a networking perspective. Right. The other thing that we'll look at here is I'm going to kind of show you guys some of the AppStack capabilities. If I go into, let's say, our one of our IIS servers, right? So I'm just going to go into one of these Web02 boxes here, and if I click on the App Insight for IIS, this is part of Server and Application Monitor. Okay. And SAM for short, if you guys know the acronyms. Basically, you're going to see on the right-hand side, once this all loads up, we're going to see a few things, right? One is going to be the app stack. This app stack is a relational view, essentially, of the items that we're monitoring within the infrastructure. So I'm looking at an IIS application, and I can see that we're also monitoring the database, right, or the databases that are communicating with the system using our Database Performance Analyzer product. We have some web transactions happening, so we're actually testing the websites with our Web Performance Monitor. We are monitoring the servers. Right, in this case, we've got 90% CPU utilization, so we're going to see the servers that are associated to this application. Any of the back-end, ESX hosts, the data stores that they're running on, the volumes that are running on those servers, the LUNs that are actually connected to, right? So this is one of those peer devices, right? So literally within, just a few seconds, I could come to this page. I'm looking at my application. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I can see that there are other issues in the stack, in the application stack, in the infrastructure stack. Right? So I literally could go through and start investigating those items, and chances are those are where my problems are. A lot of times my application may be performing poorly because maybe I have a database issue, or I've got too much memory or CPU being used on a system. So then I can go investigate those parts of the infrastructure first. So mean time to resolution gets decreased significantly. Right? So by us building these relationships automatically by knowing what we're monitoring, we're giving you the tools to be able to find your problems faster. Right? If you need to dig even deeper and maybe look at some performance metrics of certain things, we could also do that. By the way, here's an example of what the application dependency mapping looks like for IIS between the SharePoint server, right? So we have, there's these other things too. We've got the Database Performance Analyzer. Integration is a big part of being able to see your environment in its entirety in context of the application that you're viewing. So another piece of the puzzle would be maybe I want to look at performance metrics. I could go to Open PerfStack here and say, show me the application pool information. So if I click on this, it's going to take me into what we call performance analysis, or PerfStack as we've dubbed it. And then with this, I can mix application performance, virtualization, storage, database, network. I can put everything in context of the same time frame simply by dragging and dropping the different entities onto these charts. So one thing that people typically have asked us in the past is, can I view all this information in one place? How do I get these charts, in the same time frame, in one view? Well, we've provided that to you through basically the Orion platform, as we call it, right? So this comes with pretty much all the products, right, that run on this platform. And I can drag and drop these items here, and I can start to build the full picture of, let's say maybe the application performance, because maybe I do want to have the IIS performance. I want to have the database performance. I want to have my server performance, my network performance, have everything in here. And then I can save it as a project. Right, we have some other ones loaded up too here, where I've got one here as kind of my network example. Right, I've got my my WAN devices. I have the individual interfaces and MPLS circuit, and then I've got my proxy servers even in here. So to be able to see everything in one time frame is also a time savings. It gets you down to that mean time to resolution faster. And by the way, if these little metrics have little rockets on them, it means you can start real-time polling with a rolling 10-minute window. So if you're in the middle of a war room, you're troubleshooting something, you say, I need to see all of this in real time. As long as it has a rocket next to it, you can see that information in real time. So utilizing our products together, building those relationships automatically through our product, right? You're going to see that, and then you can also build out your different views this way through the performance stack. So a lot of value when you use them together, obviously all on the same server here. So with that, I'm going to turn this back to Brandon.
All right, thanks, Kevin. As you said, a ton of power. Definitely a lot of tools there to leverage. And so, as we kind of, start to wrap up here, we talked about a lot of things here over the last 50 minutes or so. And, this slide here really kind of talks about, we talked about IT stack a lot, and all things IT. And so this is SolarWinds IT operations management portfolio. So at the top, ITSM with service management, looking into the app and the performance of the application, as we talked about going through the database, into the infrastructure, ultimately into the network. And as you can see at the bottom there, wherever in the IT infrastructure it sits. So whether it's on premises, it's in a private cloud, a public cloud, whatever it is. And whoever manages IT performance. So if you're a network admin and you're kind of a jack or a Jane of all trades to where you do a little bit of everything, or you're the DBA or whatnot, giving the right context and the right tools to the right people. And then, of course, IT security really permeates everything. Security is everybody's problem, whether you're you're a network admin, you're a sysadmin, you're an application admin, doesn't matter. IT security is something that everybody needs to think about these days. So another poll here that we're going to talk about here. So we've talked again, we've walked through a lot of different products and capabilities. If you're interested in a personalized demo around any of these kind of top level areas, let us know which area. So automating time-sensitive tasks, reducing and optimizing cost for your on-prem assets and shared infrastructure. We talked about cloud infrastructure and reducing, optimizing costs there. Rationalizing your and consolidating ultimately your IT tools. Keeping your environment secure, and then optimizing your existing SolarWinds environment if you're an existing customer. So please go through there, and if we can reach out to you, post this, But I want to now, with a few minutes we have left, open it up for any question and answer that any of you may have. So if you go to the Q&A chat panel there in the WebEx browser or the WebEx window, you'll see to where you can insert a question in there. And I think we actually got our first one. Kevin, I'm going to put this one out to you and kind of while other folks ask questions and let you kind of weigh in here. But, the question was, from a cloud, or an application that's deployed in the cloud, does SolarWinds offer any application performance management or APM tools that really monitor the native cloud? So, Kevin, do you want to hit on that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we do have a couple of options. We have the server and application monitor as well as the virtualization manager, which will monitor the AWS and Azure environments, pulling that information remotely through their APIs. We also have a product called AppOptics. AppOptics is a true APM solution. It is a product that is SaaS-based. Just install an agent on the endpoints to capture the information about your applications and or the cloud instances. So, working with, Kubernetes, Docker, getting into like maybe a MongoDB or such, right? We have those types of products that can monitor those. We also have DPM, database performance monitor. So you have that capability as well, which is also a SaaS product. So we definitely have different products that will allow you to monitor those true cloud solutions that are out there.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Kevin. So we've got another question here asking about database monitoring and ultimately how that's priced. And that's really going to depend on a couple different parameters here. Kevin just mentioned we have a product called Database Performance Monitor, which is a SaaS-based database performance monitoring tool. And then we also have Database Performance Analyzer, which is an on-premises to be deployed on-prem. And so depending upon the product, but I'll focus here on Database Performance Analyzer since we talked about that in the demos and things like that today. First you would choose, do you want to deploy or purchase perpetually or as a subscription? Because that will ultimately determine kind of the differences between the two price points. But fundamentally, it goes down to then you answer what type of databases do you have in your environment? Is it Oracle? Is it DB2? Is it Sybase? Is it Microsoft SQL, MySQL? And depending upon the database, there may be different charge metrics. But fundamentally, the kind of root kind of licensing metric that we use there is based upon a database instance with Database Performance Analyzer. So what I would actually recommend is if you actually go up to SolarWinds.com and go to either like for example, the Database Performance Analyzer page, you can actually go through and see, based upon how many instances you have, what type of databases you have, what the list price would be. So you could actually go through creating an online quote without without having to interact with the sales team, just to give you an idea of, what's based upon list price, what, it would be, costing you basically. And so, that would be definitely something I would recommend there on that front. And then, another question here, could capacity management data go back a year with fields that the user can define? So, Kevin, you kind of talked through this here with some of the virtualization manager functionality, but this user brought up specifically like things like daily average, max CPU memory. Can they customize, what level of customization do they have around choosing what items show up in the capacity management type of functionality?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are certain parameters that you can choose through the process. You certainly are not, capable of kind of pulling everything in that we may be collecting. It's CPU, it's memory. Those are the types of metrics that we are going to pull in. I'd have to see if specifically we could do max CPU and max memory. I don't know about the 95th percentile. I have not seen that in there. Maybe something we have planned for a future release. I don't know. But certainly something that, you can definitely choose how you want to, model it. So when you're choosing your clusters, you basically go through and you choose, how many cores, you choose how many simulated instances you're going to choose. And then from there, it's really just, it's a very finite thing. You're saying, I want to monitor CPU usage, memory usage, and disk usage, or you choose one or all. So that's really the level of granularity you can do with the capacity planner. So choosing max or min or all that, we're actually looking at all that automatically in the system. So we're going to show you, those different those different trends already in there for you. So you don't really have to choose them per se. They're going to show up in the capacity planner.
All right, thank you, Kevin. That's fantastic. And then we've got a couple other questions here, and then we'll if we aren't able to get to every question, we can follow up offline as well. But a couple other questions here. Can SolarWinds monitor MongoDB performance? And on this one, so it depends on how deep you want to go around MongoDB. So with Server and Application Monitor, you can look at some high-level health and performance statistics. But if you actually want to get deeper, like Kevin was showing, with some of the things like, looking at wait time analysis, looking at queries, and looking at, where we recommend maybe you put another index on a table. With Database Performance Analyzer, that product specifically currently does not support Mongo. However, our Database Performance Monitor product, which is that SaaS-based product that I referenced earlier, does support MongoDB. So a lot of it's really going to depend on how deep down that rabbit hole ultimately you want to go from a monitoring perspective. So I would recommend you take a look at, probably Database Performance Monitor to start. And then, if that's a little bit more than you need, then look at Server and Application Monitor. And then I'll hit one last question here, and then we'll kind of start to wrap up here. But, a question here around monitoring Linux-based systems. And can the application monitor work for Linux-based systems? So if, Orion runs on a Microsoft stack, from a deployment perspective, but from a monitoring perspective, absolutely. So we can typically, monitor either agentlessly, or we also provide agents as an option as well for customers that choose to or prefer that route. And so we do have agents for Linux as well as Windows and other OSs. But even on the agentless side of things, we have the ability to go and run scripts against machines to go log in and pull back data, pull via SNMP, pull via different protocols. So typically the answer is yes. It will really depend on what data you want to gather and how it's exposed and available, and if we have to gather it through an agent or we can get it via agentless, means or methodology. So with that, a couple things here. Next steps, if you're interested in more webcasts, we have plenty more coming up. You can see the URL there. And if you ever need help around the products, support.solarwinds.com has detailed product training as well as documentation. And if you missed any of the webcast, be on the look for both the recording as well as the slides that we're presenting here. So these links, don't try to scribble down real quick. You'll get the slides and you can kind of click on them directly in the deck as well. So, again, thank you for everybody for joining us today. Appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. And again, thank you for joining us and have a great day.